I'm Anthony Wright, and I am your host today on the Living Conversation with,
Adam Dietz.
and we are talking with our guest, Veronique Ory, and your friendly canine friend that is showing up in the camera there.
This
Um,
is Heart.
oh, what a nice name for a dog.
Very pretty.
Um, so before the break, you were talking about uh, beginning to know ourselves well enough so that we can stay in a beginner's mind state, but also to, you said titrate or measure what of daily life we can take in and still remain balanced and centered.
hmm
Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah. So this is talked about in so many different spaces. And I think it's a really important thing. I think probably we can't hear this enough as a culture is to create really sacred boundaries around when you are connecting, let's say, with the horizontal plane. So particularly in the mornings, I recommend, and many people do, that you don't have your devices where you sleep, to in fact have them as far away from your head as possible. And then really take care to attune upward, so vertical plane, whatever your belief system is, to connect to source somehow, to take yourself outside, to cast your eyes as far as they can see, to connect with your breath, to meditation. I really love an attention to learning something in the morning, whether it be listening to a talk or reading, or if there's a course that you're moving through, something of interest. It could be a musical instrument that you're learning, a language that you're learning. And then it's like, do I feel light? Do I feel like that steam energy? And then, and only then, do I look at my phone to see if there are messages that I need to tend to, which I know most people, they might use their phone as an alarm. There are other ways that you can, create an alarm. So that right there, which, good would be 5 minutes. Great would be an hour. Like wonderful, I'm saying for me, but maybe in general, a 3-hour runway. And you just figure out what time you need to wake up so you have a good amount of space. I really love waking up before the sun rises, because then you could really be in that quiet stillness. And trust me, I grew up a theater kid. I was never a morning person. I would boast that I would more likely still be awake at 5 a.m. than waking up at 5. And these days, it's such a joy. And then just turning the dial up on awe and wonderment, getting back to that beginner's mind of like, oh, wow, the sun is doing it again. Look at him. He's just waking up. And it's magical, right? And you could just almost like you're having a psychedelic trip, but you're sober and you're just watching how the sun is doing its thing on the leaves. And, maybe you have incense going and you're just like in this trance of seeing the different shapes of the incense. And then you're thinking, why would I go to my emails when there's this amazing sight before me, So it's so important, right? And then maybe you decide, you know what, I'm going to do a fast away from media altogether. Maybe that's what I need. I'll stay empty from food until whatever time. I'll stay empty from media or communication until a certain time. And if I feel the desire to know something, maybe someone I love will tell me, or maybe I'm not meant to know it.
Yeah. Well, this reminds me of just like it's the most natural thing, right? You wake up and your mind is, in Chinese philosophy, sometimes they say daily new. You're brand new, you're brand fresh. So anything you're bringing in, it's like you're choosing to bring that in. You don't have to. So we naturally wake up like maybe closer to enlightenment. The longer we can keep that rolling, the better is what it sounds like from what you're saying here. And I also agree so much that, one of the biggest practices we mentioned a couple times on here is I cut my news consumption like by 90%, because I don't want to know. I don't mind knowing how the sausage is being made when we're all going to get healthcare. But I don't know, but I want to know about the sausage machine when ICE is coming to knock on our doors. I don't want to know, right? So and even with 10% of consumption, I still know too much. I still know lots of things I don't want to know. And I think it's so much about self-care. Like if you can care for yourself, then you can show up with so much more energy. If you're just ground down, putting your head in the blender of this news cycle every day, you just gonna snap at people. You're gonna contribute to the negativity. So I think it's really beautiful. I know I learned that lesson in grad school that I woke up really early, 5 a.m. every day, and then get an hour or two of writing done for my dissertation. And it just naturally happened. And I'm still awake before most people. I could still have tea. I could still jump into the day and maybe take a 20-minute power nap later. So I think that's really, when I think what's so great about, speaking with you as a yoga teacher is it's embodied spirituality. It's
Hmm.
not this distant thing we have to, like when you're speaking about horizontal, you also brought it back to say that's connecting to source, connecting to your breath. So when we say, I think one way, would you agree that one way of talking about it is you want to connect to what you think or feel or intuit is the highest possible thing you can, but
Hmm.
also have that deeply inside yourself to reconnect to. Is that one good way of talking about it?
Yeah. I really love that in terms of the embodied practice, that source we all have access to. There have been so many examples of people on opposite sides of the world having the same idea for a song or a book or some kind of creative download. We all have access to it. And when we attune to that, I really think of that as creating that frequency dial where we're connected to being a vessel.
Opening up.
So the creativity that pours through me, it's actually not mine. It's coming through me. So I mean, there's a certain connection to it. Certainly, this is my voice. It appears that way, and yet I always think of, for example, in the physical practice space of a co-creation. I tap into the energy of the moment, of the place that I'm in, the people who are here, and there's a psychic communication that's happening where every single time people come up to me and they say, "How did you know that's exactly what I needed?"
Mm.
And when we are all connected that way, we do get exactly what we need. It might not be, as the song goes, what we want, right? We might get the challenge, but the reframe in that is actually, thank you for this challenge. Thank you for this opportunity to practice this again. Let me resource myself so that I can move through this in a way that feels like there's a sense of ascension, so to speak, right? That we are in that journey to and through and with enlightenment. That, in fact, it's not a destination. I think we have glimmers of that set in when we're awake to it. And so I think that that's also such a beautiful part of the practice, is that we're not aiming for mastery of anything. It's a practice that is nonlinear, just like life. So I think of the infinity symbol, right? And I've had conversations with friends, and one of my dear friends, he'll say, "Oh, I'm not as far along in the practice as you are." And I said, I might off-road for a while. I might, emerge with, weeds in my hair and look all like haggard. and then sometimes, I might emerge and be serene and joyful, but it's all a part of it. I was on my back porch sobbing this morning, but no one would know that, right? Because we only see what we see. So there's definitely that conversation of awakening in that cleansing. And that's one of the beautiful practices too about yoga, is we end each practice in Shavasana. In Sanskrit, it's corpse pose. So we actually are meeting our mortality. And the intention is that we meet it with a peacefulness that I have done enough. And then we roll to one side and we become a fetus once again. And then we emerge to a seed, and it's a rebirth. And we begin anew. And how do we want to begin anew? To this breath, and now this one.
It sounds like, all through what we've been talking about is that you're wanting your clients and perhaps our listeners to be aware of setting our own boundary. And I have to set a boundary right now. We have to take a short break. I'm Anthony Wright. I am your co-host today on The Living Conversation with
Adam Dietz.
And we are talking with our guest, Veronique Ory. And how can people contact you, Veronique?
Yes, please contact me. You can find out more about me at yogawithveronique.com, as well as connect on social media at Veronique Ory. And it is social media. I invite everyone to engage and not just watch. So please reach out. I would love to connect.
All right, we'll take a short break and be right back. So stay tuned. I'm Anthony Wright, and I am your co-host today on The Living Conversation with
Adam Dietz. Thanks for joining me.
And we're here with our guest, Veronique Ory. And Veronique, before the break, you were talking about ending a yoga practice for the day in the corpse pose. But I was really struck by what you said about your experience this morning. In the opening of the day, do you do a sun salutation?
That's a great question. I love when people are curious about what my personal practice is. It's definitely shape-shifted over the years. And this morning I had some found time. I had a client who had forgotten to tell me that he was traveling. And so though it was tempting to launch into my to-do list, I put on a playlist that I've been listening to recently. It's a Montreal chill vibe playlist that I found on Spotify. And I just started moving intuitively. And I know that might be elusive to some. You could just think about that. It's not a dance. It's not sun salutations. It's not shapes per se, but it's just, if you were listening to music and you were laying down, how would you move? If you were standing and listening to music, how would you move? If that feels awkward, maybe it's like eyes closed and it's just, swaying. And then over time, that'll become more comfortable for you. You might, turn the lights out and try to create an environment that feels comfortable to do that. And then, if you do want guidance, I do have an on-demand platform that I'm happy to share later on. But I tend to be in the intuitive movement. That's how I like to move. That's also how I like to guide, where it's less very prescriptive sun salutation. Here we are, warrior one, warrior two, but rather within each shape that we can play. right? So I think there's a lot of rigidity and there's a lot of perfectionism, a lot of type A OCD on the scene. And so I really love to break up with things being just so. It's honoring lineage, certainly, and it's also allowing each person to play with, how does this resonate for me? And oftentimes when we can embody it as our own, so this might be, what a jazz musician might feel like when they're improvising and just letting the notes sort of come through. And so that's that connection of source. It's less so of, am I doing this right? But rather, does this feel light and creative to me? Does this feel like an expression that feels resonant in my mind, body, and soul? And so I was playing that with that this morning, and in fact, I had mentioned in the earlier part of the conversation of my last dog. He actually passed away suddenly from heart disease last April. And he was my faithful companion for 10 years. And he was always meditating with me, right next to me when I practiced. And when he passed away, I really lost it. For anyone who has been going through this grief season, I'm like, hand to heart, like I feel that still. It's like that ache in your bones where you feel like you can't take it. And I was really missing him this morning. I had unexpectedly adopted this puppy, Heart, pretty soon after Bowery passed away. And in a lot of ways, I feel like Bowery sent Heart to me. I mean, he died of heart disease. Yeah. My heart is broken. He sent me a puppy named Heart. I mean, it's like, come on, it's just so crazy. And what's so wild is actually, if you go to my Instagram, you'll see, two, depending on when you're listening to this, but you can see a video of my Frenchie Boston mix and it's a reel. So it's kind of like a time lapse video of the practice. And he would feel me come out of Shavasana. He would emerge from somewhere and then he would sit right in front of me and we would meditate together. And I was thinking about that as I was moving. And then when I lay down in Shavasana this morning, I was in this meditation of, okay, the physical body is just a container and it's temporary. It's so heart-wrenching when we go through loss because we just want the physical person or the sweet furry family member there. And also, okay, if I can remember and re-remember that that's temporary, but the soul, that's eternal. And the souls that are meant to be connected are forever connected. And as I had that thought, I felt this energy on my left arm. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's here. And I looked and there was nothing there, but I swear I felt this touch. And then I closed my eyes and I thought, okay, there's a new spirit here. I'm so grateful. And then I opened my eyes and Heart showed up. And I sat to meditate. And just like Bowery did, she came and she sat right in front of me. And we meditated together.
Yep, there's no accidents.
Mm-hmm.
I really, that's part of what I really appreciate doing this life work that I have done in Eastern philosophy and with my friendship with Adam and my teaching of 18 and 19-year-old students and meeting you. I mean, there's no accidents. It's an entirely resonant thing. So we're coming to the end of the show. We got probably 4 or 5 minutes left. What would you say is, if you want our listeners to know one thing about what you have for us to understand about your journey and what you've learned about as a human container that's beyond the container, what would you say that you'd like our listeners to know?
Mm. Oh gosh.
What comes to mind?
What feels most necessary right now is to awaken to our oneness. There's so much right now that is trying to convince us otherwise. It's a very divisive time, and there's so much in remembering that what unites us is so much greater than what divides us.
Yeah.
The 8-year-old version of each of us doesn't see the differences, isn't so obsessed with the titles and the things that monopolize a lot of our thoughts as adults. And I think with the lights out, in terms of the lights that are shown upon where the differences are, but when we're in the connection to spirit, that doesn't have the outer containers, that doesn't have the labels or the ways that we might just naturally be in initial conversation with the random person that we would be sitting next to on an airplane, for example, of where are you from, what do you do, all of these things. Beyond that, at our core, we all want to love and be loved. And all we need is that sense of belonging, of safety and love. And when those 3 needs are met, then the things that plague us, they don't have a hold anymore. And so whatever the practice is, whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, whether it's anything, that it can uplift you, that it can uplift your family, your community, and ultimately it uplifts all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end of the interview here. Is there anything that you have, Adam, for Veronique?
There's a bunch of things, but I think that's such a nice way to end it. I don't want to get
Right.
us off track.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate it. All right. Well, I'm Anthony Wright, and I have been your co-host today with
Adam Dietz, thanks for
Adam
joining the
Dietz, and
conversation. Yep.
we've been talking with our guest, Veronique Ory. And how can people contact you, Veronique?
Yes, you can connect with me. There's a lot on my website, yogawithveronique.com. You could learn about my book, Shine On and Off the Mat. There's an online membership, Shine, which connects to how is your heart. And there's a little 4-question quiz that will create a playlist for you where there will be a 20-minute practice, a music playlist, a journal prompt. There's retreats on the horizon. I'll be leading an immersion workshop at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York this spring, May 31st to June 5th. Really looking forward to that. And then my partner, Erin Lanahan Colenda, and I are leading a retreat in Italy in October, the 24th to the 31st, cultural immersion, wellness, really delicious food, and some movement in the morning and in the evening. And I'd love to connect. Anything that prompted some kind of inquiry in you, please reach out. You can certainly message me on my website or connect if you are on social media. I'm on Instagram at Veronique Ory. And thank you so much to both of you for holding the conversation.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next time.